April 11, 2025. South Carolina carried out one of the rarest execution methods still legal in the United States. A man sits strapped to a metal chair, a hood over his head, and a target pinned to his chest. 15 feet away, behind a hidden wall, 3 rifles are raised. In seconds, the order will be given, making him the second inmate in state history to die this way. However, to understand how 42-year-old Mikall MAHDI ended up here, we must go back 21 years. To a summer of violence that tore through 3 states, left 2 men dead, and changed countless lives forever. It was July 14, 2004. In Virginia, Mikall, then 21, stole a pistol from his neighbor's home. Along with it, he took a station wagon and a set of license plates to hide his tracks. He had a plan, and his first stop was Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The next day, he walked into a convenience store holding a can of beer. Behind the counter was 29-year-old Christopher Jason Boggs, a hard-working clerk just doing his job. Christopher asked for ID. Instead, Mikall pulled out the stolen pistol. Without a word, he fired a single shot into Christopher's face. Christopher collapsed to the floor, but Mikall wasn't finished. He stepped closer, aimed again, and fired a second shot at point-blank range, without hesitation. The sound echoed through the store. A can of beer rolled slowly across the tile. And then silence. Surveillance footage showed Mikall fumbling with the cash register but failing to open it. Instead, he robbed Christopher's lifeless body, grabbed the beer he had walked in with, and casually strolled out the door. Then he got in the stolen station wagon and headed south towards South Carolina. But that was only the beginning. On July 17, just 2 days after killing Christopher, Mikall struck again, this time in downtown Columbia, South Carolina. He carjacked a man, swapped out the license plates, and pulled into a gas station to refuel. There, he attempted to use a stolen credit card, but it was unsuccessful. The employees noticed something was off and called the police. But before officers could arrive, Mikall ditched the stolen car and took off on foot. Within a mile of the gas station, he stumbled onto a quiet piece of farmland in Calhoun County. There, he broke into the workshop and stayed hidden inside, flipping through TV channels like he had all the time in the world. He browsed through the tools and inspected a stash of guns, completely unaware of whose property he was on. It belonged to James Edward Myers, a 56-year-old police captain. That day, James had been with his wife and 5 children, celebrating birthdays, surrounded by cake, laughter, and love. Never imagining the horror that was waiting back home. When James returned home, Mikall ambushed him. He grabbed a .22 caliber rifle from the workshop and opened fire. 9 bullets. 3 hit James in the head. 1 tore through his heart. There was no chance to fight back, no time to call for help. Then Mikall poured diesel fuel over his body and set it on fire. He stole the man's police truck, his shotgun, and his service rifle and drove off like nothing happened. Hours later, Amy Myers, James's wife, herself a law enforcement officer, went looking for her husband. What she found in that workshop was the kind of horror no one can prepare for. Her husband's burned body lay in a pool of blood in the very place they had taken their wedding photos just a year before. By now, Mikall had fled across state lines into Florida. But his reckless driving in a stolen white pickup truck caught the attention of locals. Satellite Beach police responded. Sergeant Jeff Pearson recalled how it nearly became a deadly shootout. Mikall jumped from the truck with a semi-automatic rifle in hand, then, perhaps realizing the odds, threw it down and took off running. The chase was short. On July 21, 2004, after a week of bloodshed, the manhunt was over. Mikall was extradited to South Carolina and charged with burglary, grand larceny, and the murder of James Myers. But what followed was a legal battle that dragged on for years. Prosecutors pushed for the death penalty, pointing to Mikall's long record, his lack of remorse, and the brutality of his actions. And they also revealed something chilling. 6 years earlier, during a standoff with police, Mikall had sworn he would one day kill a cop. Now they argued he had finally followed through. Mikall's lawyers tried to argue for life in prison. They said his early years were shaped by trauma and instability. Born in Virginia, he was abandoned by his mother, neglected by his father, and shuffled between foster homes like unwanted baggage. He spent much of his childhood inside institutions, not for learning but for survival. By the time he was a teenager, he had already been hospitalized for suicidal thoughts and violent outbursts. People who knew him back then say you could see the anger in his eyes. He was withdrawn, unpredictable, and quick to lash out. His defense painted a picture of a broken man shaped by abandonment, abuse, and neglect. But the jury wasn't swayed. They saw the surveillance footage. They listened to Amy Myers describe finding her husband. On December 8, 2006, the jury sentenced him to death. He was 23 years old. Later, he was also charged in North Carolina for the murder of Christopher Boggs, for which he got life without parole. Then came the appeals. He filed one after another, claiming his lawyers failed him because there was new evidence or that death by execution was cruel and unusual punishment. But all were denied. And if you think the story ends there, it doesn't. Because in 2009, while sitting on death row, Mikall got involved in yet another violent plot, this time with fellow condemned inmate Quincy Allen. Together, they came up with a plan to kill a correctional officer. They lured the guard with a simple request. "Can we go to the basketball court?" But once outside, they jumped him, stabbing him again and again. The officer survived, but the scars didn't fade. The attack cost him his job, his sense of safety, and his peace of mind. As for Mikall, he lost all privileges behind bars, but his death sentence remained untouched. He stayed right where he was on death row. Then, for over a decade, everything stalled. South Carolina couldn't get lethal injection drugs. Executions stopped. In response, lawmakers reinstated the electric chair and introduced a third option, the firing squad. By 2023, the courts had cleared the way. Mikall's appeals were done, and his name was on the list. On March 14, 2025, his death warrant was signed. He had until March 28 to choose between 3 options: lethal injection, electrocution, or firing squad. If he didn't choose, the state would do it for him. Eventually, he chose the firing squad, just like Brad Keith Sigmund on March 7, 2025. According to his lawyers, the thought of burning in the electric chair or suffocating slowly on a gurney haunted Mikall. So, when the time came, he chose what he believed was the quickest way out, the least of 3 evils, they said. On April 11, 2025, Mikall's last meal was served: ribeye steak cooked medium, mushroom risotto, broccoli, collard greens, cheesecake, and sweet tea. Then Mikall was placed in a chair, a target pinned to his chest, and a black cap covering his head. At 6:01 p.m., during a firing squad execution, the inmate is strapped into a metal chair in a room that also contains the state's electric chair, which remains in place. A hood is placed over the inmate's head, and a target is marked over their heart. 3 voluntary corrections officers stand behind a wall 15 feet away with loaded rifles. The wall has a small opening not visible to witnesses. After the warden reads the execution order, the officers fire. A doctor then examines the inmate. And once death is confirmed, the curtain is drawn and witnesses leave. Witnesses, including family members, media, and attorneys, can see the inmate's right side profile through bullet-resistant glass. Mikall gave no final statement, didn't speak, and never looked at the witnesses, including his lawyer, who were seated just feet away. The state's firing squad protocol called for 3 prison staff to fire simultaneously, aiming at a bullseye target on Mikall's chest. What followed was described by those in the room as both shocking and deeply disturbing. Mikall let out a sharp yell that cut through the silence. One witness said it felt like a deep heave, as if his chest expanded hard, then collapsed. His arms flexed, and he groaned twice about 45 seconds after the bullets hit. Witnesses reported that he continued to breathe for another 80 seconds, taking what appeared to be a final gasp before going still. A prison doctor stepped forward and pronounced him dead at 6:05 p.m., less than 4 minutes after he was shot. At 42 years old, Mikall MAHDI was dead. By the time he died, Mikall had spent 68% of his life either in juvenile or adult prison. His crimes left two families shattered and fueled ongoing debates about capital punishment and the firing squad. For Amy Myers and the Boggs family, justice was done, but no sentence could bring back the men they lost. And so, a man who once swore he would kill a cop kept his word, and paid for it in blood, in one of America's rarest executions. Subscribe to this channel for more chilling true crime stories. Like, share, and comment. Thank you for watching.